This is in response to Billy's, and in addition to Billy's talking points memo from Tuesday, June 9th, 2015, the war on cops. Now, it's interesting that Billy brings this up as his starting point, the war on cops, when all it basically is a national closer look through social media at the interaction of police officers, mostly white, with people of color. That's what that's what it's really about. Now, everyone has seen the videos of the McKinney thing. Pretty outrageous to me. The officer has resigned. He will have, and the police force will have a number of suits against them. Hopefully, they will settle them for a lot of money very quietly and get rid of it all. Because if it goes to court, I would like them to lose. And lose completely. So we've seen the video, we saw what happened, we saw the cop running, we saw the cop rolling down, falling all over the grass, we saw the cop throwing down the girl, grabbing other people, putting them on the ground, yelling and screaming. And I think this is part of a much larger narrative of, number one, our fear of black people, our white people's fear of black people. Number two, the outrageous behavior that sometimes can occur when dealing with people of color. And number three, the need of our esteemed competition, such as Billy and others on the right, who indicate that the police were 100% justified in doing what they were doing, which is what Billy talks about quite a bit. Billy talks about if the police tell you to do something, you have to do it. You know, when you're walking around and an officer comes up and runs at you and screams and yells at you to get on the ground, for what reason? Yes, but is that authority? Is that too much authority that we've invested in them? Now, we'll find out more and more. We don't have all of the facts. We don't know exactly what went on ahead of time. We don't know exactly what happened before before the officer arrived, but I can guarantee you, if the word had come over the airwaves that shots had been fired, that there were people that were hurt, that there were weapons, etc., then there would have been a lot more police, and that would have already been brought out, that the officer had good reason to do what he was doing. But none of that has happened, so I would highly suspect that something like that did not happen. So some of the things that we know, are that this guy was completely out of control. And now Billy uses and what Billy does in here is, even though he admits what has going on, he has indicated that it is an excuse of liberal media to go after the cops. And that is not the case at all. Liberal media has just shown something. We see something that we don't see very often. We see the cops engaging directly with people of color, inappropriately, disrespectfully, and outside the law in some instances. Billy called the incident a fracas. Billy said it was a dicey situation. I love his use of words all the time to try and portray his thing. But he has his premise of the article, his talking points memo, is that, number one, there is a war on cops. Number two, the liberal media will go after cops any chance that they get, because they hate cops. Number three is that it doesn't make any difference if you're in a swimsuit. If a cop tells you what to do, even if you're walking around in a neighborhood that you live in, you have to do exactly what that cop tells you to do, even though he's completely out of control. Now, he also indicated, Billy clearly indicated, that it is the job of civilians to do exactly what cops say, and if you don't disagree with it, you can take it up later. Now, my particular point on that is that, unfortunately for someone like Eric Gardner, and unfortunately for someone like Freddie Gray, they can't really take it up later because they were killed by the police. And we saw both of those videos. How Eric Garner was not someone was not charged. I don't know. The people in Freddie Gray's death have been charged. We will see how I'm sure justice will be served. The trial probably still won't be for a year or more. And what we have, but so they can't speak for themselves. And how many other people of color have died through police actions, which they got away with? Remember the policeman who shot the gentleman in the back in South Carolina, who was just charged the other day, fully charged, basically went to tamper evidence, and the other officer that showed up said, I got your back. And then they were coming up with an elaborate scheme to try and justify the whole thing when the video emerged. And of course we have the Tamir Rice case, where the cops just pulled up on a 12-year-old boy and shot him dead. Almost can't believe that words could have even been said to the young Mr. Rice, because the cops just showed up and blew him away without a second thought. Billy wants to say that all of this stuff is TV demonizing the police. No, we're getting a very good handle on, and let's remember that the police are in bad situations a lot of times. You don't necessarily always know what you're coming up against. But in the cases of those three cases, Mr. Gray, Mr. Gardner, and Tamir Rice, there was ample evidence that they were not a threat, and that they did not need to be treated the way that they were treated. And how many other instances has this happened? Billy, again, is saying that TV is demonizing the police, and that he says that we're all human and we all have bad days. And yes, that is true. But what we've seen from Ferguson and what we've seen from other areas is a continued pattern, of police heavy-handedness in areas of color, in areas of Hispanic population, and areas of black population. And because of social media, we get a much closer look at how this thing is going. And what we are finding out, especially in big cities, as an example in Baltimore, where 90% of the white officers live outside the city of Baltimore. So you don't have the type of community action that is necessary to go on. Now I want to bring in just another aspect of all of this, is the psychological aspect of who we hire as police and what we really expect out of them. I think we need to work on that a great deal more. The one example being is that we know that policemen are law and order people. They know what the laws are, and they know what they can charge you with. They can be discretionary, say with someone like me, because I'm a more than middle-aged white guy. They might not be as discretionary to someone else, especially if they feel they need to teach that person a lesson, or they think that that person is trying to get out of something that they should know better about. So they have a lot of discretion in that regard. And as I said, they're law and order people. And their makeup is there is right, there is wrong, there is good, there is bad. Correct, incorrect, whatever you want to say. And they have a lot of power in that regard. And the question is, how do they use that power? Do they use that power because they have an inordinate need to dominate other people, which should be brought out in all the psychological testing that they do ahead of time? But it seems as if in a lot of these small departments, they don't do that type of stuff. And is there a herd mentality at times? When we had emails going back and forth in the Baltimore Police Department referring to them as animals and things like that. This is the type of thing that we really need to address. This is not a war on police officers. This is open and frank discussion of what is going on in the neighborhoods of people of color, black and Hispanics, and what needs to be done to have better policing. We need to get rid of the bad apples. There are only a few, but the thing is, when they do it, their actions are outrageous, and they need to be held to account to it. And it is not a war. It is something that we need to do. And let's remember how many people die in the United States at police hands, which is 10 times greater than what have died in England, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, etc. Guns are a big deal. We'll find more will be revealed.